Diamandis is a medical doctor, founder of the XPrize Foundation, co-founder of Singularity University, and co-founder of Planetary Resources, the world's first asteroid mining company. He's also the author of Abundance, a book which details what his research says the next 20 to 30 years of life on this planet will look like. I think you're going to be excited by what he believes the next several decades will entail. From vertical farming and personalized medicine to thorium-based nuclear reactors and the future of education, this conversation paints a broad picture of the world we'll soon be living in.
My mission is to get people to understand that we can create a world of abundance. That in the next 20 to 30 years, we're going to be able to meet the basic needs of every man, woman, and child. That this is the trajectory we're on, have been for the last 100 years. If you scope the last 100 years, extraordinary breakthroughs in health, in learning, in food, in energy, in all of these fields. You know, the poorest of the poor today live better than the robber barons or kings of 150 years ago. Yeah. You know, the poorest in America today, the impoverished, have air conditioning and refrigerators and a car and a cell phone and a roof on their heads and flowing water and a toilet, all these things that the richest never had 150 years ago. That's made possible by technology, and it's accelerating. Our mission, my mission, is to let people know that, to realize when there is a problem, knock it down, fix it. And so I am focusing, like Elon Musk, like Larry Page, like Paul Allen, like Richard Branson, others, on what are the problems, and let's solve them. Let's attack them one at a time. Let's attack, provisioning food around the world, clean water, energy, healthcare, learning, the fundamentals, so that people have the ability to use their time in other ways. I'm not about creating a world of luxury. I don't expect everyone to have Louis Vuitton and Ferraris. That's not it. It's about creating a world of possibility where their basic needs are met so they can spend their time contributing to society, to keeping their kids healthy. It shakes the foundation of my life when I think about countries today where the childhood mortality rate is 30%, where 1 out of 3 of your kids will die. Yeah. I mean, how can a person live their life? How can a person have respect for life? You talk about there's tribal warfare in these tribes in Africa, and how can you respect someone else's life if your kid is dying? Yeah. So we can change that. We can create a world where the infant mortality rate in Africa is the same as here in the United States. And that's a vision. That's what we should have. When people have a better ability to learn, are healthier, the profundity rate, the rate at which people have kids drops. Yeah. The wealthiest and most educated countries on the planet have a negative growth rate. So people worried about population growth, there's one proven way to stop that. Make a population healthier and wealthier. We're living in a world right now where healthcare has huge potential but is fundamentally broken. In the United States, it takes something on the order of 21 days to get a doctor's appointment. By 2020, we're going to be short 120,000 doctors in the United States. You can't build enough medical schools and educate enough doctors to reach that amount. And that's great compared to the rest of the world. Africa has got 25% of the disease burden and only 1.3% of the healthcare workers. So you can't scale and provide healthcare by more doctors and more hospitals. But luckily, what is available is extraordinary technology. And with the $10 million Qualcommtricorder XPrize, we're asking teams literally to build a handheld mobile device that I can speak to because it's got AI on the cloud. I can cough on it. It does the RNA and DNA analysis, the sputum and the pathogens in my sputum. I can do a finger blood prick, and it can do a full blood chemistry. The technology that's close to the vision of the tricorder. This is sort of tricorder 0.9 in the Star Trek universe, the medical tricorder. It's the technology that will literally allow every person on the planet to have the top tier medical diagnostics. Yeah. So we announced the Qualcommtricorder XPrize in January of 2012, and in the first year we had over 250 teams from 33 countries around the world registered to compete for this prize. And ultimately, what I believe is that we're going to create a world of healthcare abundance where every single child, adult on the planet will have top-tier medical diagnostics made possible by exponentially growing technologies. It's not about doctors, it's about the technology that allows me to know what's going on in my body no matter where I am and no matter who I am. When people talk about the future, one of the things they speak about in sort of the dystopian vision is water wars and lack of water availability. And the fact of the matter is today, unclean drinking water devastates entire populations. Half of the disease burden on Earth is due to unclean drinking water. The vision that I see of the future is a planet that's got abundant drinking water. The fact is we live on a planet where 2/3 of our planet is covered with water. We are a blue planet. That's what Carl Sagan referred to Earth as. Yes, 97.5% is salt water, 2% of the polar ice caps, and we fight over 0.5% of the water that's drinking water, but that's going to change. There's technology coming online right now in the form of nanomaterials, nanotechnology for being able to extract pure drinking water of salt water. One of the technologies that's my favorite is by one of the most epic inventors of our time, a fellow by the name of Dean Kamen. Dean has come up with something called the slingshot. Think about it in sort of biblical times. The slingshot was the piece of technology that David used to slay Goliath. Yeah. In this case, Goliath is the disease of unsafe drinking water, and the technology that Dean Kamen has created, this slingshot, is a device no bigger than a dorm room refrigerator that operates on just 100 watts of energy, less than a hairdryer, and is able to produce literally 1,000 liters of clean drinking water a day. And the beautiful thing is this slingshot device has 2 hoses. One hose you stick into anything wet, the Pacific Ocean, the latrine, arsenic-infected water. And out the other hose comes water so clean, so clear, it meets the medical standards for injectable water. Yeah. What Dean has done is he's prototyped and demonstrated these devices. And at this exact moment, Coca-Cola is testing these devices in 6 countries, and if it meets their specs, which I have every confidence it will, Coca-Cola will actually deploy these in over 200 countries around the world to give billions of people clean drinking water. Yeah. We're entering a period of time where whatever used to be scarce can become abundant. Technology is the force that takes that which was scarce and makes it abundant over and over and over again. And that goes for healthcare, it goes for education, it goes for water, and it goes for energy. So we're living in a time on Earth where technology has been growing exponentially and globally. What is underwriting, what is underpinning all of this is what's called Moore's Law. It's the notion that our computers are basically getting twice as fast roughly every 18 to 24 months. And anything that uses computers, anything that becomes an information science, like biology, like learning, like healthcare, like medicine, is growing on the back of Moore's Law. In 2010, the average $1,000 could buy you a computer that could compute at 100 billion calculations per second, 10 to the 11th cycles per second, which is extraordinarily fast. It's more computational speed that a high school kid has today than the Defense Department had 30 years ago, or that the Apollo program had. Fast forward on its continuous growth, by 2023, the average $1,000 will buy you a computer that's got 10 to the 16th cycles per second, which is just a number unless you speak to a neurophysiologist who will tell you that's how fast the human brain does pattern recognition. So that's how fast your visual cortex or auditory cortex sees images or listens to sounds. And it doesn't stop there, because the rate of computer speed growth means that 25 years later, the average $1,000 laptop is now calculating at the rate of the entire human race. When we have that kind of awesome computer speed, it means that anything that uses computers is also exploding. Yeah. So we're going to start to see synthetic biology, which means people who write code using A, T, C's, and G's, the 4-letter alphabet of life, will start to form life forms that are going to create new foods, new fuels, new vaccines that are going to enable us. So we're going to be able to feed countless more people. We're going to be able to create new types of fuels that take the sunlight and convert it to energy sources, like the same way that literally plants do that. But these new life forms are going to do it far more efficiently. Yeah. We're going to see artificial intelligence, we're going to see robotics, we're going to see digital medicine, we're going to see computers and networks and sensors. All of these things growing on the back of Moore's Law. And ultimately, we're going to enter a time where an individual, a small team, can do what only governments and large companies could do before. Yeah. It's an epic period of time ahead.
Part of this film deals with economics. You know, I think that in the future, capitalism, socialism, these things probably won't really exist to a great degree anymore with the advances in robotics, automation, 3D printing, things of that nature. Do you have any idea, or could you theorize for us what an economy 70 years from now might be that kind of supersedes capitalism?
You know, I can give it a shot, but I have a hard time even thinking beyond 30 years, yeah. Right? Because I think most of the transformations that are going to happen to society, to our economics, to our way of lives, are going to happen in the next 20 to 30 years.
Okay.
We're going to have a lot of chaos and a lot of reinvention. The basic institutions that we live by are going to be reformulated over the next 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, I think about the notion that in the future, our basic needs, energy, water, learning, healthcare, all these things are effectively going to be free.
Yeah.
The things that we paid money for are going to be what I call demonetized. You know, we have demonetized a lot of things. We demonetized the classified ads, mm-hmm. Right? Craigslist basically took the money out of the newspapers, put it into your pocket. Mm. We've demonetized research. Google did that. We've demonetized record stores and demonetized bookstores. All these things, you know, the money comes out of that business and into the consumer's pocket, meaning they're becoming free for you and I. So as we're going forward, I see robots that can do our work for us literally for the cost of energy, which is becoming cheaper and cheaper because of solar energy. We're going to see artificial intelligence that's going to be doing work for us. Mm-hmm. The way I see the future is what I call, you know, for lack of a better term, sort of a technological socialism. Yeah. Where technology is going to be leveling the playing fields and giving all of us access the same way that a Maasai warrior in the middle of Kenya on a smartphone mm-hmm. has access to more information than President Clinton did if they're using Google. You know, Google for a Maasai warrior in Kenya is the same as Google for Larry Page in Mountain View. Yeah. And this sort of realization that when technology scales so big, it's whether it's a billionaire using it or the poorest person on the planet, it's the same. Yeah. That's extraordinary. So people's basic needs, food, water, shelter, learning, education, all of these things are going to be fundamentally handled by technology. Yeah. I'm a libertarian capitalist, right? I love capitalism and I'm an entrepreneur. I've started 15 companies. I sort of think negatively about typically socialism where the government's doing it. But if technology is doing it and it's available for everybody, now it offers up, it frees our time to do other things. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do with our time that we were using to, you know, earn dollars to have access to the best Harvard, MIT, Stanford education, which is now available to everyone, you know, literally for free. Yeah. I don't know what we're going to be doing, but someone somewhere is going to start figuring that out. Are we going to become playing games? Are we going to all become artists? Are we going to become explorers and adventurers? Yeah. It's an extraordinary time ahead. So I'm going out to a phenomenal meal with my wife tonight mm-hmm. at this restaurant we love. Yeah. I guarantee you, at the table when I'm sitting down to eat, the miles traveled by that food will average probably 2,000 or 3,000 miles, right? The wine may have flown in from Chile. The fish may have come in from Alaska. The vegetables may come in from South America. It's extraordinary. We don't think about the food miles. We don't think that when you go to Whole Foods, the foods we walk around have traveled in from around the planet. And it's expensive and it's inefficient. So the notion of vertical farming is that in the future, instead of growing the food all over the planet and shipping it to all kinds of locations, we're going to have the ability in the middle of the city, in the center of Los Angeles or Santa Monica or New York or Chicago, to build vertical buildings. They may actually, if you're in Chicago, may be on one of the Great Lakes as well. So I think of it as urban farming versus necessarily vertical farming, where in a proximity of 5 or 10 miles, instead of thousands of miles, the food is being grown for you. In fact, it's being grown 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The lighting in that building is, you know, maybe sunlight during the day, and it might be artificial light at night, perfectly tuned to the frequency of that plant that's being grown. the pH of the water, the nutrients in the water are being computer controlled. You know, you may have fish growing there where the waste from the fish are then feeding and fertilizing the food. It's this complete closed cycle, which is perfectly balanced to maximize the growth of that food. So you literally, in these kinds of closed systems, will get lettuce that grows 3 or 4 times larger over a period of time because it's growing 24/7, because it's perfectly pH balanced and the nutrients are exactly what it needs. Ultimately, when it's finally harvested, it's fed down the block. One of the other things that's to note, if the transportation system went out in Los Angeles today, if the power went down, if fuel was no longer available, LA would starve in under 3 days.
Wow.
We have just under 3 days of food supply. So literally diversifying this and making it more efficient allows us to reclaim farmland, allows us to stop wasting fuel to transport that, and really make society that much more robust. The smartphone is a game changer across the board. It's one of the biggest game changers ever. In 2010, we had just shy of 2 billion people connected on the internet. By 2020, we're going to go from 2 billion to 5 billion people connected. Most of those connected by smartphones. That's 3 billion new people, 3 billion new minds plugging into the global economy. These are 3 billion people who've never bought anything online. 3 billion people who've never had the chance to contribute an idea online. They represent, for me, the greatest epic era of innovation. These are 3 billion innovators who are going to create new solutions, design new solutions, consume new solutions. They also represent literally tens of trillions of dollars flowing into the global economy. People say, you know, these are the poorest people. They make $5 or $10 a day, but multiply, 3 billion people by 365 days in a year times $5 to $10 a day, and it's a huge influx. So they're, if not, your direct customers, they're your customers' customers. Now, these people connected on the internet on their smartphone, if you think about it, on their smartphone, they've got access to more knowledge and information than President Clinton did just 15 years ago. It's extraordinary. And on their smartphone, not only do they have knowledge and information, they've got Skype, they've got two-way video conferencing, they've got HD still, they've got HD video camera, they've got GPS, they've got libraries of books, music, games. They have on their smartphone, which they've microfinanced for a few dollars a day, what you and I would have spent, $100,000, $250,000 just 20, 30, or 40 years ago. So literally the poorest people on the planet have access to the most extraordinary technology because of these devices. But more than that, these devices are going to allow those 3 billion people that I call the rising billion to get the kind of learning experience, the kind of education that only the wealthiest can afford today. And if they've got a tricorder as part of that cell phone, they're going to have health. So what happens when you have 3 billion poor people who are learning and healthy? They become wealthier, better educated, and can contribute even more to the global economy. Now they start tapping into cloud computing. They start tapping into 3D printing. They start becoming a manufacturing part. They start becoming solution part. And we literally have this exponential that is squared or cubed growing in innovation. So it is an epic time ahead. One where the rate of change, the rate of innovation, the rate of problem solution we're going to have is exploding. In my book Abundance, I talk both about solar and about thorium reactors and micronukes and so forth. I mean, I'm a huge fan of both. First of all, nuclear got a really bad name 30, 40 years ago when the first reactors were poorly designed and put out there and began to fail. The fact of the matter is we have extraordinary designs today. Designs that are so safe, I would literally put it in my backyard. I wish I could. I would do it and I would sell power to the rest of LA and Santa Monica. But politically, in the US at least, anyone who complains to a neighborhood society is going to basically be able to put the kibosh on that. It may be that these thorium reactors and these micronuclear reactors end up in Africa and China and parts of the world that are just greenfield operations, and they'll have a more robust energy source than we do. But having said that, the good news is that solar has the ability to transform this planet. You know, people talk about energy scarcity and, you know, energy shortages. The fact of the matter is, we have 5,000 times more energy that hits the surface of the earth than we consume as a species in a year. We are bathed in an abundance of solar energy. It's just that we haven't had the technology yet to be able to convert it, but it's raining energy.
Yeah.
And the good news is that we are developing the technology. The price of solar has been plummeting as an exponential at the same time that the amount we're producing has been growing as an exponential. It's been increasing at 30% per year. And I have every confidence, every knowledge that we will have the ability to meet not only 100% of our energy needs, but 200, 400, 800%. As solar, you know, grows, we're going to blow through our production, and the cost of solar will drop. The energy cost will have a squanderable amount of solar energy. Yeah. What we need as well are batteries. We're going to need battery breakthroughs because obviously the sun only shines during the day and typically wind only blows at night. Those are two good counterbalancing parts, but batteries will allow us to time shift, and there are extraordinary breakthroughs. We're getting ready right now to launch a series of battery XPrizes and change the equation. So I think that energy will become, I don't want to call it free, but you know, the fact that the sun is pretty much free. And one of the other beautiful alignments are the parts of the world that are the poorest, Central America, South America, Africa, parts of Asia, are the parts of the world around the equator that have the most sun. So it's a democratizing. In fact, all of these things are democratizing forces that make it available for everyone literally for free. My friend Nicholas Negroponte, who's one of the greatest thinkers in this field of learning, and also Sir Ken Robinson, another one of the great thinkers in this field, really have taught me that it's not education, we're about new ways of learning. And education is a system. It's the government system, it's our school system, educational system. But what we have is the ability to help people learn in new and novel ways, to allow people to learn how to learn. On Earth today, incredibly, we have 880 million illiterate people. Yeah. It's crazy. 60 to 100 million of them are kids. Wow. So we are getting ready here at the XPrize Foundation to actually launch a global literacy XPrize. That's fantastic. Which will be, how do you take technology, software, hardware, tablets, smartphones, and allow kids to be able to learn without having to have teachers or schools? How do we allow kids to teach themselves or teach each other, so that literally literacy could spread as a wave? You know, we can't teach enough teachers. We can't build enough schools to really provide 100 million people with, you know, the learning of literacy. Yeah. So it has to be something that can be viral, something that can spread across the globe, just like the cell phone did, right? In end of 2015, there'll be 1 billion cell phones in Africa. Wow. There'll be 200 million Android handsets. It's insane. Yeah. And it's become, you know, this device that used to be a luxury for the wealthiest, you know, financial bankers in New York is now a necessity for every single person in Africa to do their business, to do their banking, and ultimately to do their healthcare and do their learning. You know, I have a vision of the future that I see pieces of. The internet is our nervous system connecting us. We're becoming far more interdependent. National boundaries are dissolving, becoming immaterial. You know, I have closer to connections in a business and societal world to people outside the US, and I don't care where they live. Yeah. I think about the following model. You know, life and the universe tends to repeat itself. It tends to repeat patterns. Yeah. In the earliest days of life on this planet, 1 billion or so years ago, when life was first forming a few billion years ago, the single cell life forms were called prokaryotic cells. They were a bag of cytoplasm with some DNA free-flowing inside. They were the simplest forms of life. And that life evolved to become what's called eukaryotic cells. These are more complicated single cell life forms that incorporated technology in them. The mitochondria was, in essence, cellular technology that was incorporated in to allow a cell to make more efficient use of energy, to bring in oxygen and use the oxidative process to have more energy. The eukaryotic cell, then evolved to become multicellular life forms where cells came together and collaborated and worked to do more efficient things of gathering food and propelling itself and replicating. And then these multicellular life forms became more complex structures, eventually becoming you and I, where we are a collection of 10 trillion cells, all working together to form, an individual. I view that happening today in society. We are today at that stage where we were prokaryotic life forms. We're individuals, and we're beginning to sort of flow this technology into us. And this technology, which we have been flowing, we've been co-evolving with technology for 100 years, from the eyeglass to the automobile to the cell phone. All of these things allow us to see further, allow us to run or drive faster and know more and more. So we're becoming, with this technology, effectively that next stage of life, a eukaryotic cell. And then the internet and all its connections are making us a multicellular life form. What I think of us as a meta-intelligence, a connectedness of humanity, where we're beginning to plug the internet into the brain. We're beginning to really, the fields of optogenetics and cerebral cortex implants, is it happening right now? It's happening right now. Will it happen for everybody? I don't know. But we will enter a time, I believe, where the connection between us will become so powerful, so intimate, our connection with the internet, that you're never going to want to unplug yourself. If I can plug in and literally have omniscient, omnipresent, power, so I can see and feel and know whatever I want, to unplug yourself, you would feel so disconnected and so lonely. I think that we're going to tend to have that level of connection. Now, I don't know what the time frame is for that, but for me, it's 30 years, 40 at the outside, well within the horizon of my children.
Absolutely.
And that's going to transform our lives. The rate of change is skyrocketing to the point where how we live our lives is not going to change decade to decade. It's going to change year to year. It's scary, it's exciting, but ultimately it is happening.
What do you feel is the largest threat currently facing humanity?
One is people who are going to try and stop the technology. I don't think the technology is stoppable. The discoveries that are being made in quantum computing and synthetic genomics and stem cell science and brain-computer interface, these things are not just happening in the borders of Silicon Valley or San Diego and you can stop it there. These things, once they're discovered, are happening everywhere. They move across borders at the speed of light. And when you try and stop them, all you do is put the kibosh on the research. When one of the Bush administrations stopped stem cell research here in the United States, all that meant was that the US went from first place to 8th place, and it picked up in China, in South Korea, in India, and other parts of the world. So I think that the government is going to have a hell of a time trying to regulate the rate of change. I don't think it's possible. So there's going to be a lot of turbulence there, a lot of chaos, and people trying to stop things, and ultimately it can't be stopped. The second thing is that this technology is dangerous. As powerful as it is also dangerous. Will people use synthetic biology to create terrorist devices? Will AI be used to take down financial systems? Being cognizant of these things and being able to use these technologies, as powerful as they are, to help protect, look for, block. So security is going to be an issue. So those are the two biggest things. The other existential threats are asteroid impacts, and I'm working on that with my asteroid mining industry. But ultimately, for me, it's being able to know enough of what's going on in society to be able to identify the evil actors, the bad agents, if you would, and prevent them from taking action. And I think that is possible. I think that our antivirus software, if you would, for humanity is something that we can do, we can build. I ultimately believe that creating a world of abundance is going to happen by entrepreneurs and by the general public. It's going to happen by mostly small companies, some large companies, not going to happen by the government. The beautiful thing here is, for the first time ever, the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest market opportunities. Solve hunger, solve learning, healthcare, water, food, all these things. You become a multi-billionaire in the process and have the gratitude of the planet. Today, more than ever, The technology in the hands of individuals is extraordinary, more powerful than ever before, more powerful than companies, the largest companies or governments had just even 10 or 20 years ago. So individuals, small teams, entrepreneurs who are looking for significance and looking for challenge, looking to create wealth and goodness in the world can actually attack these problems. Yeah. And it's going to take risk. It's going to take people willing to try big, bold ideas that have a likelihood to fail. And unfortunately, governments don't do that. We saw in the United States when the Department of Energy backed one solar company, Solyndra, that went bankrupt, and there were congressional investigations like, how dare you back this company that went bankrupt? You better believe the DOE is never going to do that again. But that's the exact wrong answer to take away. The government should be doing a lot of these investments. They should be taking a lot of risks. In fact, the majority of their things should be failing, because if they're not taking big enough risks. If they're taking risks that are going to always work, let the financial markets do that. The government should be taking risks that are going to benefit humanity. But we don't do that today. Yeah. Large companies that are having to worry about quarterly returns and the stock market price, government agencies worried about congressional investigations, they don't take big risks. Ultimately, it's the entrepreneurs, thousands of them who take risks. The majority fail, but those few who succeed, they've got breakthroughs. And you have amazing disruptive technology like 3D printing, like Skype, like all of these things. And for me, that's what gives me the greatest hope for the future of humanity.
Do you feel that everything will be all right for humanity?
I do. I fundamentally believe everything will be all right. In fact, I think that the future is going to be much better than any of us could possibly imagine. I think that the technology is coming online, empowering humans. I fundamentally believe in the goodness of human nature. I believe that there is so much power in technology today. The fact that we're here today, the fact that we are effectively losing our privacy. Yeah. It's hard for people to hide today. So if you want to be a bad actor, it's harder and harder to do that. Yeah. And that gives me, the loss of privacy allows me to sleep at night. But I do fundamentally believe in the goodness of human nature, and that we empower that and can create a world of abundance.
Abundance. There's perhaps no better word to describe the future of our species. A world where there are enough resources for everyone. No more toiling through jobs to pay for services that should be human rights. A world where the human race can focus on learning, creating, and living in peace. It's a beautiful vision, and one we can realize if we all work together.